I'm done with painting eggs. I had enough of painting eggs. I think I've painted plenty of eggs. What am I talking about? Well, if you followed me along in my art journey, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I would say watch some of the previous videos and you will quickly discover what I am talking about and what's up with these eggs. Welcome to my studio and welcome to this video in which I'm going to paint a different subject than eggs. Yes, the Tisch Academy continues with a very interesting lesson, painting free objects, free vessels, Andrew calls it. And this was a great lesson. Not that the eggs weren't great lessons, the eggs were very, very informative and it was kind of fun to paint them, but this was a lot more fun to paint and I ended up with a great, interesting painting. Now, as you may know, Andrew Tischle paints in oil, but I'm using matte acrylics. And creating a reflective object with matte acrylics, that sounded kind of crazy to me, but it does actually work. Now, you could use a gloss medium, and in the end of the video, I'm doing that to enhance the reflectiveness. At least I think that would work that way, but actually it doesn't. It is all about arranging the paints, the colors in such a way, painting them onto your subject in such a way that it gives the impression that the object is actually reflective. And even with some matte paints, some totally matte acrylics, that worked really great. I really enjoyed this lesson, and in the video I will show you all about it. In the next lesson in the Tisch Academy, we're finally moving away from the eggs and we're going to paint something new. We're going to paint these three vessels, and this is the photograph that was supplied with it, and I'm just going to follow along and discover a lot of new things. Now it's all about the relationship between these objects and maintaining the shape and form. There's reflective objects, there's matte objects, and how they relate to each other. But we're going to start with the background first, and for that I'm going to just use some burnt umber, some ultramarine, and normally Andrew uses yellow ochre, but in the Sonja there is no yellow ochre, so I'm using the Turner's yellow instead, which is pretty close. Might use some white too. And when I'm going to paint, I'm pretty sure I'm going to use the gel retarder, but for the background I'm going to use something else, and that is a flow medium that will help me to spread this paint more easily, perhaps get a little bit more of a watercolor effect, just spread this paint out nice and evenly. And that is quite fluid instead of the gel retarder is thick. This is a very fluid medium that helps to get the paint flowing. Now the background is going to be a bit of a boring gray color, but that works nicely later on for the contrast. And one thing I learned already, we're going to work on the shadow in a minute, and normally I would use a lot of blue, some blacks, but there's totally different colors for the shadows. Adding some red to gives a nice and warm shadow. Now the first object I'm going to paint, I think, is the easiest one because it is a matte object and there's no reflection going on. And reflection is, for me, a bit tricky because I normally don't do reflections and I'm not really successful in it. But I'm pretty sure with Andrew's help, he will get me to a next stage in this and paint a really nice reflective object, even with matte paints. Now that's going to be an extra challenge. Now the inside is not much reflectiveness going on, but it's all about the outside of this vessel and the relationship between the colors. Now this is a nice teal color Andrew is using. I don't have teal, so it's an aqua color, but I think it's close enough. And here came the real challenge for me, how to add in enough colors to make this object look reflective, as if it shines. It has, like ceramics, this final layer that is nice and shiny. And I think even in the first strokes already on this, the teal cup, it works already pretty well. And now this next cup that is laying down, it's quite of a satin. It's half, yeah, it's not, it has some reflective parts and it has some less reflective parts. Well, as you can see, I wasn't totally happy with my background colors, so I changed them a little bit, give them a bit of a warmer tone, and also make these shadows a little bit stronger, and still the underlayer will come through. That's the nice thing about painting this way. And I noticed that with also the Tish Academy, he doesn't use, like normally I would use, a burnt umber underground. No, but he uses his underpainting straight away with colors, but pretty rough. And now you can see me starting to do some details. And I think now you can also see already the difference between these objects, how the teal cup is reflective and how that reddish cup is more is matte, and how the other one is going to be somewhere in between. And I'm just doing some extra colors in it, and that gold worked really well because of the dark background. Now, if I would paint gold with normally with watercolor, I would use very light colors, but with these acrylics, using that nice dark underground makes that gold come through and shine a lot more. And here's some extra details, and finally using some lighter colors also to get this reflectiveness. And now my painting is done, and I'm comparing it to the one Andrew did. Now the print again is a little bit dark, but I think I did pretty well with all these objects, having a shiny object, having that matte object. But if you paid attention, you did see me use some medium at the end, and that was a reflective medium, and it shows up a little bit if I move the camera. I added a little bit of gloss to see how that works. It was just an experiment, and to see if that would enhance the reflectiveness. Now it doesn't, because if you lay it down you can't see it. You really have to move the painting or change your position looking at the painting, and there you see the reflectiveness. Well, I lost a little bit of the shape in the laying cup. That got lost during painting. It's not nice and round, and I should have changed the angle there to match the opening of the cup, and I should have done that. So I lost that, but overall I'm pretty happy with my result. Now this lesson was a great challenge for me, and I picked up a lot of things from it. First of all, looking at these static objects but still conveying some kind of story by the way you paint and how you bring in the colors, the underground and the colors, and the darker tones, the lighter tones, to get the relationship between all of these objects going. And if you look at them, they still tell kind of a story, even though they're static and they're not talking and not even moving, but they still show the viewer the relationship between all these objects, that there's clearly one reflective, one is really matte, and the other one is somewhere in between. Normally this isn't a scene I would paint, but it was still very enjoyable and very helpful to pick up all the relationships and how to mix the paint to get the right properties in these vessels so that they stand out from one another and you can clearly see what is going on with them. And also mixing the paint, the warmer tones, the cooler tones, and using some colors I would normally not even mix with each other, but seeing that if you mix certain colors, how really well that worked. So that was a great lesson, enjoyed it. So thank you, Andrew, for this lesson. This was really an eye-opener for me.